Welcome to the Checked Out Podcast, the official podcast of the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library. I'm your host, Jessica Renato, and I'm here today with poet and professor Yalie Saweda Kamara. Her debut poetry collection, Be Say Do, was the winner of the 2022-2023 Jake Adam York Prize and is the winner of the 2025 Ohio Book Award in Poetry. Yalie will be joining us at the Downtown Main Library this Sunday, April 26th at 3:30 p.m. to talk about her book and signed copies. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, Yalie, first tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a writer, a researcher, a professor from Oakland, California. My family's from Sierra Leone, West Africa. So I'm first generation American, and I moved to the Midwest about a decade ago.
Wow.
And so yeah, I've been out here for a while. I've known how to spell Cincinnati now for 8 years.
Yay!
But I've had a really great time out here, and so yeah, it's a little bit about me.
That's great. I'm also a Cincinnati transplant, so getting those N's correct in the correct order and how many makes a difference.
Yes.
So how did you get into writing as a career?
As a career, I think before even the career point, I was thinking about this question a lot. I think like my writing career maybe started as an observer of the world around me, and I think that was like a product of being a child of immigrants. So trying to understand particular customs and ways of life and being between Sierra Leonean culture and American cultures is probably where it started. And I think insofar as like moving towards professionalization, the first time I thought that it was possible to be a poet was in high school, outside of high school, so being parts of different enrichment programs in the Bay Area, namely Youth Speaks and 826 Valencia. Those are places that allowed me to share my thoughts and to be able to write and express. And so I just, for a long time, thought that writing was maybe like a static form, or maybe all things had already been written, but those programs really allowed me to be able to engage in and participate. And so I've been grateful to be parts of different writing communities in undergrad and grad school that have led me towards that path. And so I think taking classes in undergrad at UC Riverside, and also in my MFA at IU and PhD at UC, and other organizations and places between have taught me that it's possible to have writing as a career. And I think it's also what else is possible to see other writers that are alive and doing incredible work that have inspired me to take that path.
That's so inspiring for sure. Did you, when you took those workshops and classes, you said that was in high school, did you have any interest in writing before that, or what sparked you towards that path to join those groups?
I think what happened was I didn't even know that it was a thing. Like I just thought that I guess the way that we've been taught writing was that it has already happened, and we're here to maybe to memorize or to regurgitate or analyze, but purely for maybe an educational sort of outcome and not for the enrichment and self-expression. So those places taught me how to think about it differently. And so to actually answer your question.
Yeah, I was just curious, what made you say, I want to go to that workshop? Was, I'm someone who also writes, not poetry, but I write fiction, and from the time I was reading books as a kid, and then I was like, oh, maybe I can actually write something myself,
Yeah, I can add to that. So I think for me, it's I was home for spring break 2002, I can remember this, I was a junior in high school, and I was flipping through the TV, which is funny, we used to flip through into the 2000s, right? So through different stations, and I saw a guy that had a cool hat on, and I was like, what is that? So I flipped back to the TV station, and he was a poet, and there was a documentary about the first youth national poetry slam in America. So I happened to just tune into that, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And I think what excited me was that there was a sort of inversion that was happening where adults were listening to young people as opposed to young people always listening to adults. And I was like, I didn't even know that was possible. And there's space to create and space to cultivate particular voices and spaces to self-express and find words for particular joys or struggles that young people have and have been thinking through. And I found myself to be part of that sort of sentiment, and I wanted to be part of that lineage. And so that's what the turning point for me was. And so that just kind of changed everything for me. And it's just I don't believe in coincidences, but that was really unusual for me to come across that, and to know that this national documentary had something to do with my city or being close to where I was from. And so, yeah, that meant a lot to me.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what does your typical writing process look like?
I wish it were something cool. It's not cool at all. It's not very.
We do love to glamorize.
I know.
The
It was just
authors
like,
in the
okay.
writing process.
Yeah, so when the sun and the moon is in the sky at a certain, orientation, and I have my green tea, no, I wish it were cool. It's not. Basically, these days, it's just, I think it just depends on what's happening, like, in life. As a grad student, I think that, like, I was more of a nighttime writer, and, like, my world was, like, really around, like, writing and reading, and there's time, like, centered around that. Now that I'm a professor, it's a little different, and so I think, like, my writing times, like, are probably closer to the morning, and moments in between, but I always, like, devoid of the season, I always have a notebook with me. So I think my writing process is, like, largely, like, thinking through ideas in my head. So it's not physically writing all the time, but when it is like physically writing, it's sketching down notes. And so I think, like, and sometimes it'll be like I just make notes to myself and I return to them later. And so it's like, so part of the writing process is fueled by obsession. So it's like whatever I continue to come back to is part of the writing process. But, like, insofar as, like, a certain time every day in a very beautiful space, that's not my writing process. And so
and I think that that's okay. I think something different works for every person.
Totally.
And I know when I got into writing, I had people say you have to write for yourself first before you write for other people. And so I love this idea of carrying around a notebook.
Absolutely.
And just jotting it down whenever it comes to you.
And I think that, too, like, the writing process is multimodal. So it's not like I do the writing, but sometimes it's recording a sound in a place. I think of that as part of the writing process, or taking a picture, or taking video footage of something. And so all these things are parts of the writing process. It's like, what are we archiving? Sounds and spaces and textures and ideas. And so I think those are all, well, now it sounds cool, but
It's a very, like, multimedia approach to writing, which is very neat, I
absolutely,
think.
but I think that's how we think and we live, and so I think that would be the answer for that.
Oh, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your debut poetry collection.
Yeah, so this book, I think the oldest poem in this book, like the first draft of it, I think was in 2011, and the book was published in 2024 through Milkweed Editions. And so the book is it's thinking about home, different iterations of home, and it's kind of a love letter to Oakland, where I'm from. It's also heavily informed by the Midwest and Cincinnati and Bloomington, Indiana, where I lived. And it's thinking a lot about acts of care and love and joy, and what happens in the absence of those things. And it's thinking too about kinship and thinking about Blackness and kind of like autobiographical notes. And so it's thinking about memory, where I'm from, and also connection and community. And so those are some of the key themes that show up in Biseidu.
That's great. And where did the name for it come from? Where did the title for your collection come from?
It came from, there's a poem in there.
Great.
And so
I love that.
What I will say, it's based on something that my mother and I witnessed, and it's something that we heard. And through the poem, you'll understand what it was like that we heard and what it becomes.
I love that, and it kind of harkens back to what you said before about listening and taking in. Oh, I think that's great. Well, we're going to take a quick break and hear about some things happening at the library, and we will be right back.
Do you need a private space for studying or a meeting? Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library offers free meeting and study rooms for reservation. Available at most library locations. Learn more at chpl.org.
To expand access to STEM-related learning tools and materials, the library has partnered with the Library Foundation and Dean Regas to circulate 15 telescopes for use by library cardholders. Telescopes are available at 15 locations, and each can be checked out for a 7-day loan period. Learn more at chpl.org.
Welcome back to the Checked Out Podcast. I'm here today talking to Yalie, Saweda, Kamara, and we're talking all things poetry. So you are going to be doing an author talk at the Downtown Main Library this weekend. So tell me a little bit about that. Are you, I know it's National Poetry Month, you're going to be in conversation with another author. What can we expect at the event?
What can you expect of the event? Just, I think thinking about perhaps the overlaps between myself and Intizar in terms of our writing, our approaches, and also things around like inspirations for poetry, thinking about what poetry means in Cincinnati and beyond, and what we can expect out of National Poetry Month, and how poetry can be a participatory art form, and what it means to have been I was the Cincinnati Mercantile Library Poet Laureate, and so thinking about the role of the Poet Laureate in city and in community, and what opportunities it afforded to spread poetry throughout Cincinnati, to continue the dialogue between Cincinnati and the country and the world.
Oh, I love that. That's going to be great. And Intizar, our writer-in-residence, is so good about talking about diverse cultures and girls from diverse backgrounds, and I think that's going to be a fantastic conversation. I can't wait to hear it.
I'm looking forward to it, too.
So we've talked a little bit about the kinds of themes that appear in your work. Are there any others that you want to mention that we haven't talked about already? You talked about senses of home and origin a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say other things that show up in the collection, there are things, topics around mental health that show up in the collection, and thinking about how that has informed my life and the life of my family, and thinking about the ways in which speaking about mental health can be a cultural taboo, and so how are we moving against that intergenerationally, and thinking about how awareness can afford us relief and safety. And so that's something that appears closer to the end of my collection, as well as thinking about sobriety. I'm someone who has been sober for about a decade, and so that's something that I thought was important to mention, especially when we think about sometimes writing and the lore of the writer. There's a lot of alcohol involved, and thinking about a sort of romanticization with that, and I wanted to think about that, and also thinking about what it's afforded me to not be a part of that. And so there's writing around that, as well as thinking about themes of faith and how that's informed my family's life, but also in my own journey, in my own personhood in life, how that all comes together.
I think that's really important for readers to see, too, on the page, themes that are hard to talk about or maybe hard to think about. And I think poetry kind of naturally lends itself maybe to a creative way of thinking about those things that are so often hard to talk about.
Absolutely. And I think I feel grateful for the writers that have been doing that have given me the sort of courage to want to participate in those conversations as well. So it's cool that there's a dialogue going on as well.
I agree. Well, you said you started writing Bisay Du in 2011, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's the first poem.
So, which is so interesting that it spanned like this decade, and I'm sure the poetry has probably shifted a little bit, right? Since you started writing over that course of time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Insofar as the shift, if there's
starting it in 2011, publishing in 2024. Were you writing that whole decade of time, and like how did your writing shift over the course of a decade, essentially?
I think, I wasn't doing a whole lot of writing in that time. I think more of the writing sort of ramped up when I got into my MFA program, and what changed was that I thought I was actually going to an MFA for nonfiction, and so like perhaps the writing is more reflective of like influences of nonfiction and like fiction, and it's sort of shifted over time as I've learned more about poetry, in particular in different poetry forms. Like maybe there's a little bit of a shift there, but there's like a storyteller impulse always in the poetry. I think over time, I just think I've become more honest as a writer. I think that there are less things to be quote unquote ashamed of, and so like I think I've moved more into a space of vulnerability, and I think part of that maybe is reflective of moving away from like home. And there's something about a self-realization or self-actualization that happens sometimes when we're on our own in a new place, a new city.
In addition to Bisay Du, have you written anything else that you're particularly proud of?
I have edited an anthology of youth voices that have experienced, or young people that have experienced immigration. So it's called What You Need to Know About Me. And we have, I was able to be in dialogue with young people between the ages of 11 and 18 from over 21 countries, and so able to kind of think about, again, like this inversion of like audience, and now adults are listening to what the young folk are saying about their experiences through immigration, and what was afforded them in that time, and what was lost, and what has been sort of recreated, and who they've become in the span of that time. I've also, I have 2 chapbooks, so prior to publishing BCAD, I have a brief biography of my name, as well as When the Living Sing. So I have those projects as well. And so those are other things that I'm excited about and proud of.
And what was the name of the anthology?
It's What You Need to Know About Me.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure we captured the name of that. It sounds fantastic. You've worked as the Cincinnati and Mercantile Poet Laureate. What is the value of having a rich environment for writers and readers in Cincinnati?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways I want to answer this question. The value is people get heard, people get dignified. I think that's the value, and I think that there's so many people in Cincinnati who do not believe that they're poets and artists, but they have incredible stories that show the opposite, and they are, and it's just not about, it's about access to a sort of platform or to a space. Mm-hmm. And so I think the role of the Poet Laureate can be being able to facilitate those spaces, and so I think that's what it is. It's like I think for me it's creating the spaces, but also like the fun thing is just getting to hear people's stories and getting to see those aha moments. Working with different groups of people across the city and across the country has been wonderful. So
help them push through that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Are there any poets you find particularly inspirational? Yes,
I am a big fan of Ross Gay. He's a poet who's in Indiana. Adrian Matika as well. Who else am I inspired by? Rita Dove, Ellen Bass. Wow, when I ask this question, I usually can't remember anybody because I get so excited. Mm-hmm. But I'm just thinking, who else am I inspired by? Paul Flores, Juan Felipe Herrera, Liang Lee. Yeah, these are some of the poets that really move me. Gwendolyn Brooks, Lucille Clifton. So yeah, just a few.
I have to write all of those down.
I should also say Khadija Cissé, who's a Sierra Leonean poet who's meant a lot to me. And she's the first Sierra Leonean poet I read just a few years ago, who's in London, England. So her work has been really moving to me as well.
Do you know that? Can you name one of the titles of one of them for us?
I think it's called Irki. Okay. IRKI is the name of her collection through PPAL Press.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take one more quick break.
Yeah.
And we will be right back.
Visit your favorite arts, cultural, and recreational attractions in Hamilton County for free with a Discovery Pass. With your library card, you can reserve a Discovery Pass for 15 local attractions, including the Cincinnati Museum Center and American Sign Museum. Learn more at chpl.org.
Did you know the library offers free printing? Print up to $5 of documents every day for free. That's 20 color pages or 33 black and white pages. Additional pages are only 15 cents a page for black and white or 25 cents a page for color. Learn more at chpl.org.
Welcome back to the Checked Out podcast. I'm here with Yalie, Saweda, Kamara, and we are talking all things poetry. And this is the part of the show where we get to talk about what we're reading, listening to, watching, anything recent that you've really enjoyed or that comes to mind?
Yes, so I just came back last night from the New Orleans Poetry Festival.
Amazing.
And I was on a panel that was thinking about a poet named Bob Kaufman, who was a Black Jewish poet from New Orleans, and he was a pretty significant figure in the not the Black arts movement, in the beat poet movement in the Bay Area. And so we did kind of a deep dive into his work. And so I've been thinking a lot about his work, and if there's a particular sort of volume to think about, it's The Ancient Rain. So his collection called The Ancient Rain, but there's also collected poems and other things that he's written, but The Ancient Rain is something that I'm really excited about right now.
That's great.
And insofar as, that's what I've just been consuming, a lot of Bob Kaufman. Insofar as shows, I'm watching Rooster. And that's very nice, and I love watching shows that are thinking about like academic settings. To be like, oh, that's like my experience, or thank God that's not my experience, right? So that's been really fun as a kind of a light read or light watch, and to think about just like the way that even literature is represented in that show has been really fun to think about. Also been watching Hacks, which has been really interesting, thinking about dialogue and story progression and subtlety. So that's been great. I am putting together a playlist for my friend Matt Donovan, who's also an incredible poet, and it's called Femcies, listening to a lot of female hip-hop artists and rappers from around the world. And
that's
so
very
some
cool.
of them that are, I'm going to pull it up, some of them that are really exciting to me are Rhapsody, who's out of South Carolina, Nadia Rose, who's out of the UK, Shoma Josie, who's out of South Africa, Lee Young-ji, who's out of South Korea, and No Name, who's out of Chicago. So those are some of the folks that I'm into right now.
That's
so,
great. And
yeah.
all of these people that you mentioned are new to me, and I imagine will be new to our listeners, which is so fantastic. And what the library is all about. Like, I love getting to learn about new voices, or maybe voices that I just haven't heard of
Absolutely.
yet. Poetry is not always, or hasn't always been like my go-to genre. I'm usually a fiction reader, but I have discovered something I really, really love. Cassie Wilson is local to Cincinnati, and she is fantastic. Kate Baer, Amanda Lovelace. I love kind of weird girl poetry. You know, it's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to dig into the ones that you told us about as well.
Thank you.
So, Yalie will be joining us at the Downtown Main Library this Sunday, April 26th at 3:30 p.m. to talk about her book and sign copies. You do not need a ticket for this event, but books will be available for purchase at the event and will support our library foundation. We hope to see you there. Thank you for listening today, and we'll see you again next time at the Checked Out Podcast. Checked Out is a podcast presented by the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library. It is produced by Paul Wellington, sound engineered by Steve France, hosted by Jessica Renato, and supported by the CHPL brand team, as well as the hundreds of library staff across Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.